Like many fans, I believed that producer Terry Brown, the architect of Rush's classic 1970s sound, must have been the great defender of that guitar-driven era. That he was the band's guardian of the classic sound. This is what I've always believed. Well, a recent comment from Alex Lifeson himself quietly overturns that assumption and reveals a moment in the studio at the mixing board that says an awful lot about how Rush approached creativity, compromise, and just who it was who made the call about changing their musical style. Rush fans tend to divide the band's history into eras: the hard rock guitar forward 1970s, the synth-dominated early to mid-1980s, and then the gradual guitar reassertion era that followed after that. For decades, the prevailing narrative went something like this. Geddy Lee became fascinated with synthesizers, technology changed, and Alex tried to adapt just as best he could. And for my own part, I always had an extra plotline in there, which is that Terry Brown also resisted the surge of keyboards and was therefore replaced. And within that story, Terry Brown is often imagined, as I say, as the guardian of the old sound, the producer who helped forge 2112, Farewell to Kings, and Moving Pictures. That's why what Alex said recently really surprised me. Alex described a specific memory when working on the album Signals during the creation of the song Subdivisions, and here's the direct quote. "We would all get behind the console and we would all have jobs. Turning a knob, pushing a fader at a certain point, those sorts of things." End quote. He goes on about talking how when working on Subdivisions, quote, "I was sitting there thinking, I can't hear the guitar. I'm a very easygoing guy, but I thought, this is not right. So I pushed that fader up. I remember Terry Brown turning to me, smiling, reaching over, and pulling the fader back down. I haven't forgotten that," end quote. So that's not a dramatic outburst, there was no argument, there was no anger, just a smile, and a fader quietly pulled back down. What makes this moment so important isn't conflict, it's what it reveals about authority and intention. So this wasn't a record label demand, this wasn't an accident, it wasn't Alex not keeping up with the times, this was a deliberate production decision endorsed by the producer who helped define Rush's earlier guitar-driven sound. And what's equally telling is how long Alex waited before he even said anything about all of this. He adapted, he experimented, he found new textures, new roles, and new ways to serve the songs. Only now in hindsight and without bitterness does he begin to talk about this era and how he resisted the intrusion of synthesizers. And this is where things get interesting and a bit nuanced, because I'll be honest, the Terry Brown era remains my favorite Rush era. I love the guitar forward albums, I love the rawness and the interplay. That doesn't mean that Terry Brown was wrong about what he did in the 1980s, because hard rock was starting to feel exhausted. New wave and synth-driven music was dominating the radio. Bands that didn't evolve just simply disappeared. Rush had explored their earlier approach pretty thoroughly. There may not have been anywhere left to go without changing, and from that perspective, turning the guitar down wasn't anti-Alex, it was pro-Rush survival. That survival did come with a cost. Alex's guitar became more textural, less dominant. Sometimes it was sublimated into atmosphere rather than actual riffs. But it also forced him to become a different kind of guitarist, one whose influence is often felt rather than just blasted at you. That tension between identity and adaptation is the heart of Rush's 80s sound. That small moment at the mixing board, the smile, the fader, the unspoken disagreement, captures something profound. Sometimes great bands don't just battle trends, they battle within themselves, they battle with their past, and they battle with their instincts. Alex Lifeson didn't, quote, lose the battle over synthesizers, he survived it with grace. And Rush didn't abandon their roots, they made the difficult choice to move forward when staying put might have meant fading away altogether. So now I'd like to hear from you. Do you think it was surprising to find out that Terry Brown was one of the architects behind the synth takeover in the 80s? And do you think that the synth era was necessary for Rush, or do you think it was a compromise taken too far? Let me know in the comments below.
Music Guru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.